Well, welcome, folks. Welcome to our conversation here about long-term care. We're just going to talk a little bit about why you might consider long-term care and how that would work, how you would do that if you wanted to do it. So, first question is why? Why would you consider it? Well, one reason is you may need it, right? You may well need it. We'll talk. What are the odds that you will need some kind of long-term care program or of funding? What are the odds? We'll talk about that. The other thing is that if you do establish something for long-term care, then it gives you choices. That's what's really great about it. It gives you choices. And so perhaps with those choices in place, you could avoid a nursing home. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, avoid a nursing home. And the other thing is that a lot of times the first place we turn, if we need long-term care, is to family. And sometimes that can get difficult. It's not an easy thing. So perhaps with a plan in place, you could protect your family from that sort of thing. And then finally, long-term care is very expensive. I mean, it really is expensive. And you could protect your portfolio with this because the cost of long-term care can absolutely devastate almost any portfolio. It can be very expensive if it goes on for a long time. So the question is, what are the odds? Well, I really need it. Well, if you're over 65, well, let me back up. If you're not, you perhaps will be, with the grace of God. You'll get over 65 at some point. If you are, you get there, the chances are pretty good you will need some long-term care. It's about 70% chance that you'll need it at some point. Well, that means almost everybody, not everyone, but almost, And then the question, of course, is how long would you need that? Maybe it's going to be a few months, or maybe it could be a couple of years. Alzheimer's stays for long-term care, or need, if you have Alzheimer's, for long-term care, generally is 8 years on average. So there are a lot of cases where it could be a long, long time. 20% of all the people that need long-term care at some point need it for more than 5 years. Well, that's a long time. That can be very problematic on so many different levels, So the odds are, yeah, you may well need this. And it certainly was consideration, that's for sure. So that's the odds. What about this idea of avoiding a nursing home? Nursing homes have never had a very good reputation, have they? No, they really have not. And COVID didn't help, of course, but we've always known, you don't want to go there if you don't have to, if you have a choice. You don't want to end up in a place like this, right? This nursing home, Brookdale, Quincy, Massachusetts. I am familiar with it because I visited my brother-in-law, Jack, there. That's Jack before he had his accident. He was about 30 years old. He had an auto accident and he was crippled for life, injured for life, had brain damage and so forth. And Jack spent a lot of time in places like Brookdale. Well, we'd get him out of there and find him another place, a better place. There was no plan in place in those days to help Jack. Maybe they didn't even have them in those days. That was a long time ago. But Jack went from one place to another. He finally did get really good care the last 12, 13 years of his life. Passed away last week, in fact. Jack did. He was age 79. So Jack spent about 49 years bouncing around in some of these places, and some of them not so pleasant. This place here, Brookdale, I'm not sure it warrants a 2-star. When you walk into Brookdale and that door opens, the first impression you get is the stench. It just hits you like a hammer. You can taste the stench of that place for uncleanliness. Smells. I'm sorry to be so graphic. It does. It smells of urine and these things. These aren't crazy. This isn't unusual. This is fairly common. You go to the right. When you go in, you go to the right. Jack's room is down behind that tree on the first floor. But you walk by rooms with the doors that are open, a lot of them, and people lying in the beds, some of them in good order, some of them not. Some of them not even covered, some of them naked. A lot of people literally crying out for help. Now you wonder, maybe they don't have their wits about them and they're just a little bit crazy at or maybe they're just not being helped, Dreadful, dreadful place. So if we could avoid that somehow, we had a choice to avoid that. Most people don't want to ever consider that. Most people would like to get their care at home if they could. And if you have the right kind of a plan in place, perhaps you could do that. So that's avoiding the nursing home, protecting friends and family. Do you know that 80% of all care, long-term care, is given by family and friends, mostly family? 80%. First of all, the non-professionals, it's not their business, but beyond that, I mean, I can envision myself, if that's me, that old man there on the right, I suppose someday I suppose it would be. And that's my daughter, Kristen. Well, I'm not sure if she'd get me out of that chair. Maybe she could. But you're only needing care because you're unable to do certain things, activities of a normal daily living, like showering, getting dressed, feeding yourself, using the bathroom. When that goes on and it's your children helping you, how long does your dignity stay intact? You wonder about that. I don't suppose it's very long. And it's a lot to impose on folks. And sometimes it's not going to last long. I mean, that's what we think. Kristen can help me for a couple hours in the afternoon. It doesn't always end up that way. I have a friend in California, El Arenas is his name. And he moved in to help his dad. His dad needed that help. And he was 29 years old, and he just was able to go ahead and move right in and help, needed a lot of help. And so he did. And then eventually El's dad passed away. And then El was able to get on with his life. It was 20 years later, though. It was 20. El was 49 when he came back and claimed his own life. He had been detoured for all of that time. Now, neither one of them would have wished that on each other, and they wouldn't have intended that. But as a loving son, doing the best that he could to help his dad, but his whole life was detoured because of that. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just avoid that kind of a possibility? And it can be done. It can be done. We'll show you some ways to do it. That's friends and family. The other thing is your portfolio. This stuff is expensive, long-term care. This one right here is cheap, right? $76,000, Central Florida. Not very much compared to others. Actually, the range, if you dig into the software here, the range there runs from about 55 to 108 or something like that. It is not uncommon, though. Anywhere in the United States, it is not uncommon. If you want good care, to spend $10,000 a month, 125,000 a year, not uncommon at all. And depending upon what level of care you need and so forth. But it's expensive. It's expensive. So how do we deal with that? How can it be funded? Well, there's two ways basically to do it. One of them, the old way, is kind of gone now. You can still get these old policies, but I want to make sure that you are clear about this. The old kind of policy, you would pay for it, and if you didn't need the care, then you lose the money. It's just gone. And then the next year you pay again, and if you don't need the care, you lose the money. Sort of like your house insurance. You spend $2,000 and the house does not burn down. So the next year they charge you again $2,000, and so it's use it or lose it, right? Now, as it turns out, the odds of your house burning down are 1 in 1,200. The odds of you ending up with needing long-term care are about 1 in 2, actually. So much greater chance, and the cost of that long-term care can be worth way more than your house when you think about it. If your house is $300,000 or $400,000. Long-term care can exceed that in a heartbeat. So really you should take a look at it. There's a new kind, started about 20, 25 years ago, and it's been evolving, getting better and better. And this is where you use it. If you use the long-term care, you go ahead and use it. But if you don't use it, you can pass it on. So what happens is you have an asset that's intended for long-term care. If you don't need it, then you can leave the asset to the kids. Maybe that's what these folks had in mind. If I don't need the care, well, the kids can get the money. That's much better than use it or lose it, So, yeah, big changes. And how are these things funded? How do you create them? Well, you can do it with cash. In other words, you could just buy a policy or make payments on a policy, monthly or quarterly, and you have a policy. And these things are mostly created around life insurance policies, and that's an asset. Life insurance is an asset. And if you never use it for the care, then the kids get the death benefit. So that can be done. We can show you how that works. But there's two other ways that are increasingly popular in the last few years, where you have an existing asset, you already got it, and you just move it from this pocket over here on the left side to the other pocket. It's money you already have, and you just move it. So let me show you how that works. I'll give you a couple of examples here. The first one is converting a piece of your IRA. I love that one. I'll show you why in a moment, but there's tremendous leverage there. Then the other one is there's a lot of older folks that have got annuities. And a few years ago, the government stepped up and came up with some ideas on how we can make that work. So I'll give you a peek at both of these things here, all right? So IRA funding. So here's a person, we'll call him Bill, 58 years old. He's got $600,000 in his IRA account, and he hopes he never has to use it. He doesn't need it for income. He doesn't even want to take out those required distributions that you have to take out. He doesn't want to do that. He really wants to give it to the kids. You know, that's what he wants to do. This would be great, split up with the children. Of course, it's taxable, but the kids will get what's left over. Well, why doesn't he give it to the kids now? Or just give it to him now and he can see them use it and enjoy it. Well, just in case he needs it. That's why, right? It's an emergency fund. It's the backup. It's the place I go if I need some money, like for long-term care. Well, let's say that happens to Bill. And in his community, good long-term care is $10,000, $11,000 a month, $125,000 a year. Not hard to see that. You see it all the time. Well, he could go into the IRA and get the money. That's the idea, right? But if you took out 125, then you have to pay a tax. So really, Bill might have to take out maybe 160,000. He's in a 20% bracket. Okay, well, at least he had the money, and that you only got a year's worth of care there. That's good. Now, of course, he was in another year. It's another pretty substantial hit. How long would this IRA last? How long would this thing be until it was just gone? Well, it's less than 4 years. So what happens if Bill, heaven forbid, has Alzheimer's and he's in for 10 years? Well, he runs out of money. So the kids don't get anything, that's for sure. But what about Bill? He doesn't have the money to take care of his own care. What happens then? Nursing home? Federally run nursing home? Not a good choice, not a good place to be if you can avoid it. So what could you do? What's different? Well, we work with, at Concierge for Advisors, we work with a number of companies that do this. And we only use the one that is right for the situation. Some are better than others, depending upon what you're wanting to do. When it comes to this strategy, a company called One America is by far the best from our perspective. Let me show you how that would work. You have this $600,000 IRA, and what we do is we go in and we break it in half, if you will. So we leave half of it in the IRA itself. The other half is in the side of a special kind of an annuity created especially for long-term care. It stays inside the IRA account. So push 300,000 over there. And One America will bonus this account 20% to sweeten the pie a little bit, because you're going to pay tax someday. Whenever money comes out of an IRA, you're going to pay tax, right? But here what they do is they don't want to take it out all at once. And they give you a little extra, make it easier for you. So they create this special annuity, and that annuity over the next 10 years will fund a whole life policy, a specially created whole life policy, created only for the purpose of long-term care. But it is a whole life policy. That means life insurance policy means it has a death benefit, right? But let me show you how this works. The 360 doesn't come over all at once. It comes over 10 years. So each year, that's a taxable event. So 36,000, maybe we owe 6,000 or 7,000 taxes, perhaps. And we do that for 10 years. But all the time, right from day one, as soon as somebody pushes enter, there is a death benefit because there's a life insurance policy over there. $342,000 death benefit for Bill. Okay, so now this thing is created and it's funded over 10 years. And its purpose is to provide long-term care. But before we get to the care itself, I want to back up and say, where are we now exactly? Well, look at this. What happens if something happens day 2? Heaven forbid, you step off a curb, there comes the cement truck, and that's the end of that. Heaven forbid. What happens? Well, if the money had been back in the IRA account, the 600, the kids would have gotten the 600,000 and pay tax on it. Here, they would get what's left in the IRA account, 300, plus the annuity, right? That's 360, but we took out 36. So 320 something. They get those things. Those are both taxable. They also get the death benefit, $342,000. And that's not taxable. That's tax-free. So God forbid something happens to you, the kids are way better off when that happens. Even as soon as it happens, if it happened right away or the second year or third year. So as to the kids, this was the idea in the first place, give it to the kids if I don't need it. Well, the kids would be much better off. What if you do need it? What if this, so this is Bill, once again, 58-year-old male. If Bill needs long-term care, by the way, this is a reimbursement. So Bill needs the care. He pays the lady that comes to the house to take care of him, and then he submits it and gets the money, right? He can get up to $126,912 a year. Let's call it $127 per year, tax-free. So if his care costs $125,000 a year to have someone come to his house so he doesn't have to go in the nursing home, if that's what it costs, then he's going to have that money available to him. $126,000 a year. How long will that be available? Some of these, most of them, in fact, well, yeah, I'm going to say virtually all of them, have certain time limits, like it's 4 years or maybe 5 or 6 years or something, 3 years sometimes. And so that's a factor for a lot of people. How many years will I be covered? I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But remember, in this case, this is one of the other reasons I really like this policy, is that Bill is married. He's married to Sue. If anything happens to Sue and she needs the care, guess what? Same thing. $127,000, and they can both need it at the same time. It's okay. They can both need it. That's the way it's structured. Well, what if Bill needed it for 10 years? Would it run out? No. These are set up to be structured for life. Now, this is an option to do this, and I've got it in here for these calculations. That option I've selected, that it goes for life for both husband and wife. That's how these numbers were generated. Well, think of this. Imagine this. Let's say Bill needed it for 10 years. 10 years at 120, that's $1.2 million, right? From what? From a $300,000 move from one pocket into the other pocket, $1.2 million. Say nothing of, what if it was Sue? What if it was both? I know of a family in which both people, this is I don't know that myself, but my friend Erica Ghaffari works in an office, and these people are both getting care, and it's costing them $31,000 a month. They're both needing it. They don't have a plan. So they're going through a portfolio so fast you wouldn't believe it. This never runs out. Now, if you use it up, remember, I had to set aside for the kids unless I need it. Well, if you need it and you use all this money, $500 or $1 million worth of care, there isn't anything for the kids because you did use it up, right? Remember on the IRA, if you would just left it there, it was gone in a heartbeat, less than 4 years. But here, you're taken care of for life here. And if you don't need it, don't worry, the kids will get it. They get the death benefit, right? So that's pretty powerful leverage, I think. Really, really powerful leverage. There's another that's very popular, and that is because in 2006, Congress came up with something called a Pension Protection Act. And one of the things that they did in there is they recognized that long-term care is expensive. People are living longer. They need some support there. And a lot of older people happen to have annuities. Problem is, when the money comes out of the annuity, it's all taxable. And what they did is they worked with insurance companies and figured out what could they do, what kind of programs could be created. And here's what they did. So here's the annuity. Someone has a tax-deferred annuity. They put $100,000 into it years ago, and now that $100,000 is worth $400. Well, the first $300 that comes out, that's all taxable. And if you need that for long-term care, that's hard. So what they did is they created some parameters, some guardrails for insurance companies, and they said, look, you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this, and you can have this advantage, but it's only if it's used for long-term care. So here's where it goes. The insurance company creates a special annuity that is qualified for this program. The 400 moves over here. All right. Now, if the long-term care is never needed, then the 400 goes to the kids, just like it was going to. Now, does it grow? No, you know what? It's like a CD. It's not going to grow. It's just going to, it'll be there. It won't go away. The kids will get it at some point if you don't need it. But if you do, let's go back to Bill. If you do, Bill could generate from that 120,000 a year. And yes, you guessed it. It's the same thing for Sue, and it's for life. That's a lot of power out of a $400,000 annuity. And once again, if you don't use it, don't worry, the kids get it. Pretty powerful stuff. So where do we go from here? Here's my suggestion. Someone invited you to this webinar. Give them a call, talk to that person, and set up a 15-minute conversation to figure out whether this makes sense for you. You'll ask them questions and they'll have some answers for you, and they'll do a little research, look at some of the things that you have and figure out what you could do. And then if you want to do, we can help it happen for you. All right, so there you go. Thanks for attending.